that life had a lot of imbalances. There were always ups and downs. So my older brother found this at an antique store and thought of me, and he said, I'm giving this to you when you go away to school, not only because you're a person who looks for justice, because justice is not always there and you can't always get it. He said, but you are the person who tries to restore balance back to anyone's life that's been through any ups or downs in life. So I kept this with me for over 30 years, and I always think of him, and I always think of balance. Balance is a key word, and that's what I'll teach my kids or students. Let's try and come back and restore balance. And that's why it's so important to me, and that's been my middle name. Justice or Balance has been my new middle name for a long time. Should I pass it on? Sorry.
Or just pass it.
Well, thank you. As the circle keeper, I'll begin by starting with a question or a question prompt, and then we'll each have an opportunity to respond. We'll pass this in a circle either direction. One of the things to be mindful of is the phrase, say just enough. And that may look different for different people, and it may look different for different questions, but it's an opportunity to say everything you need to say and nothing more. A couple of things that we want to start with before we get moving is confidentiality. Typically, confidentiality is something that we observe in circles, so that means that anything that's discussed or disclosed would remain within the group. Any story that's told would be only the person that tells the story would have the right to retell that story. However, confidentiality is a little bit different in this format because we have to film it for our class. And so we will be filming and editing and then also broadcasting this for our class final. One of the places that would be good to start is to, for a question, is just to acknowledge today's circle is not confidential and it will be filmed. And then if you have any comments or thoughts on your reaction to that, feel free. So for me, I acknowledge that today's circle will be filmed, and that leaves me feeling a little bit vulnerable.
I'm not vulnerable at all to it. On camera all the time. It's okay that it's filmed.
I'm not vulnerable either. I like to use it as a teacher because I'm a teacher, and it's awareness.
I'm the one filming it, so I'm okay.
The idea of being filmed makes me a little anxious, but we'll get through this.
I'm a little anxious, but I'm okay too.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone's openness to participating and sharing. Next up, we're going to establish what are called the group values, ground rules, group norms. And so one of the things that is helpful is to just think about what it is that you need to feel safe and comfortable in today's group. So for me, I need to feel like I can participate without judgment.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, participate without judgment.
I don't know. I don't want to copy you. That's a good one. I don't know. I think to feel comfortable, I just need it. Like if I don't want to share something, not share.
Comfortable to share?
Comfortable to not share if I don't want
Okay.
to.
I think the need to feel most comfortable, speak about things is just for everyone to be open-minded.
Yeah, my value on this is just that I want everyone to understand that that I appreciate them doing this, and that I want them to feel okay doing this and saying what they say, and that nothing is a bad answer or a wrong answer. So I'm not judging, I guess.
Mine is very similar to Nick's, and it would be respect everybody's answers.
You guys took all the good ones by now. I'm going to generally say the same thing. I plan to be like super honest with it, so yeah, open-mindedness, I guess, and honesty among both sides. We disagree on whatever.
Thank you. One thing I should note is if you want to pass, you are always welcome to pass. So you can either say pass or just signify passing. So as a group, we have no judgment, comfortable to not share, open-minded, no wrong answers, respect, and honesty. So I'm going to pass this around one more time. If you feel like there's anything that should be up there that's not, feel free to say it and we can add it to that list.
I like the list. Solid list.
It's a good list.
Thank you. So now we'll be moving into kind of our circle topic. We're going to explore the concept of sexual assault, and that can mean a lot of different things to different people in regards to how we approach that and what it brings up for each individual. Our first question is, the Me Too movement has been in the news a lot lately. When you hear reports on Me Too, what comes to mind? Feel free to sit with this if it's your turn, and you don't have to respond. You can take a moment to collect your thoughts too.
I mean, honestly, like the first thing that comes to my mind is just, you know, my sisters, and, you know, the way that they're treated, and it makes me, you know, just think about the times maybe, you know, where I didn't do things that were right, that I could have maybe done a little better. They're just small things. That's what it makes me.
When I think of the Me Too movement, I think of all of the attention that it has gained, especially within the last year. Think of a lot of social media efforts to kind of make sexual assault, sexual harassment more, I guess, prevalent for people to share their stories and support one another and just kind of open up the eyes of the public to things that were traditionally just not so much spoken about.
When I hear about Me Too, I have, like, depending on the medium that I'm hearing it from, I can have conflicting thoughts on it. Like, sometimes it affects my perspective by making me realize how different things are for women in some situations, and things that they go through that I can't understand, because as a guy, I don't ever feel threatened by someone doing these things. I don't ever feel, I'm never fearful in those situations, and it's hard for me to understand what that's like. But then other times with Me Too, I don't like the blurring of the line between harassment and assault, and I think that needs to be made clear by some people that those are not the same thing, because I do think that can hurt the movement. So I think that there's overall positive to bring light to it, but there's also there's some negatives that's been come along with it by people using it for what I don't, in a bad way, I'd say.
My answer is very similar to Nick's. I think it's a great platform for women, female, even male, whoever's been sexually assaulted, to speak out and perhaps gain a little bit of healing by speaking out. However, I too think that some people take it too far, and they're using it maybe in the wrong way. So I agree. I think it should be, it is a serious matter, and I don't think, I don't know, somebody going on and saying, oh, well, 12 years ago I was smacked on my rear end, and then carry on a big thing. But I don't know, perhaps it is a big thing, but I think it's just going too far sometimes.
So first, in like positive aspect of it, like they were saying, it opens up the range of sexual assault. So like before, if you hear it on TV or you read about it, whatever, it's always like you think of like the worst things, like sexual assault, you think of rape. But now that kind of opens up like the full-on spectrum to where you can see that it was like it can be sexual harassment or molestation or whatever, but and then how it's used in like an abuse of power. Right? So for subordinates, but then again, I want to keep saying the same thing, but I think it's gotten way too popular via social media, and I think a lot of people are trying to come up with something that happened 35 years ago so they can be popular on social media again, which I think just degrades the people who are seriously emotionally hurt by it, or even to the highest other side of the spectrum where it takes away from the cases that should be looked at more.
One of the things that just resonated with me for the Me Too movement has to do with like the larger cases, specifically like the Larry Nassar case. He was the doctor that treated the gymnasts, and as that unraveled, and it was like more and more girls, and it was not just one institution, but you had University of Michigan, you had the Olympic Committee, you had USA Gymnastics. I mean, it was shocking how, and it was shocking the amount of victims and how unresponsive these agencies and institutions are, especially for girls that were at the time underage or very young adults. And so that, I guess, has been really eye-opening for me from a systemic piece, and looking at sexual assault and sexual trauma, not just from a specific incident, but from what are some of our systems that allow things like this to not just happen once, but perpetually. So the second question, in life we have many different roles: man, woman, significant other, mother, father, professional. In considering the roles that you play in your life, what are some of your fears when it comes to sexual assault?
I think I play a bunch of roles, right? So I'm married, a cop, do army stuff every once in a while. I don't have any fears when it comes to sexual assault, except for against other people, because that's my job. So on the street, that's my job. It is my job to try to stop it preemptively or respond to it. And of course, like I think most people, and their significant other, my wife, I worry about her in theory, just because she's a tiny person with a female. And I hate to say that based on gender, but like I said, like he was saying, I can walk down wherever, especially like at my job at night, or wherever all the stereotypes of where danger happens, and I have no fear of being sexually assaulted. But for me, I would just think that fear for other people, because it does happen like more often than you think.
As a mother of 2 daughters and 2 boys, well, I worry about my 2 girls. They're away at university, so I worry about what goes on in university, especially weekends. Teenagers get drunk and things happen. As a teacher, I worry for my students, and I worry that perhaps they're too afraid to come out and say that something has happened. So if we are more aware and we make people aware and talk about it, it's a good thing. And not just females, men too.
Quickly, I'm just going to remind everyone, just make sure you project your voice a little bit, because we don't have any microphones in the middle, and they're all behind us. So try to talk somewhere near one. Just try to make sure that you get a little bit of voice going, so I can salvage some of this video. I'm going to edit that out too. As far as fear, personally, I feel none. I don't think the risk of me being sexually assaulted is very high. It's like a life or death scenario for me, I imagine. But I do think about it in my life with my girlfriend, who, again, small person, and it could happen easily if I'm not around. So that's something I worry about. I have 2 nieces that, I've thought about, what age do I tell them about how men are and how to mentally prepare them. I talk to some of my friends with daughters, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna have someone beat them up, and I'm gonna have the like these older cousins that are men, protect them, and my other son will protect them, and I'm like, you know, you got to teach them how not to be manipulated by men, not expect to shield them from that, and it's one of the things I'm worried about having a daughter for myself, because I know how dangerous it is, and how easily you can become a victim of things like that. So my fears are more for other people than for myself.
My fears are not only for myself as being a woman, but also for others, for those around me, for my friends who, you know, I see and hear about the things they do, and even for others that I don't know, just the knowledge of like what trauma can do to somebody, and the knowing that that could happen, and my fear of knowing that especially vulnerable populations like children and people with disabilities, that this is something that can happen to them. And professionally, having worked with sexual assault victims, my fears are again for them trying to kind of work through this trauma and, you know, take their next steps and figure out, you know, how their life will, you know, go on after. So I think that it's something that's very prevalent and can affect a lot of people at any point. So I have a lot of fear with it.
I worry about my girlfriend sometimes. She likes to do a lot of like modeling stuff and things like that that are sometimes provocative. And, you know, it's hard. I don't really tell her that often that I'm scared, because I want her to, you know, feel comfortable doing what she's doing. But I do get worried for her, some of the things she does.
I think that I would say my concern is, I have a daughter and she's young, and my husband's in law enforcement, and I want my daughter to grow up feeling empowered and independent and very much in charge of her own body. I don't want her to feel like her body is part of like a patriarchy, and I often find the line between, and not so much now because she's younger, but as she gets older, the line between her feeling empowered to make decisions that are right for her and comfortable doing that in all areas, whereas maybe my husband is very much like more protective and feels the need to, I don't know, so I guess that's a tension point when it comes to this. I think another area is, you know, also with teaching boys and teaching young adults what consent really looks like, and I think that our definition of consent is changing a lot, and I think that's a positive thing. But I also think that there's a lot of education that needs to happen, because there is so much gray in that area, and it's important that both genders are educated around that. Let's see. So when considering systems, whether it's the criminal justice system, college campus laws, school settings, media portrayals of violence against women, what feelings, frustrations, or concerns come to mind? And I can repeat that. Nod your head if you'd like that repeated. Okay. So when considering systems, so either like a criminal justice system, school system, media portrayals of women or sexual violence, what concerns or frustrations come to mind? And I can start. When I consider the criminal justice system, I am really frustrated at the experience victims of sexual assault have within the criminal justice system. I think that it's irresponsible that individuals can go through something really traumatic, and then we have a system that further traumatizes individuals who are victims of crime, and so that would be a source of frustration for me.
I mean, I can speak to generally the criminal justice system. Obviously, like, the last thing we want to do is re-victimize a victim, but we can go through anything, right? So you said the criminal justice system, the school systems, anything like that, everything is generally preventative, or not preventative, so it's not very proactive. We're dealing with it after the fact. So obviously there's steps in place after that. People are always going to be upset with, but I think the thing that we just talked about in the last question was we need to work about like preventative stuff, which is not so much where, I mean, we say we do a bunch of it in the criminal justice field, but it's more reactive. That's what we do. So it's difficult to prevent crime, especially sexual assault, because a lot of it's opportunity. But I guess that would be more like most people don't know like the rights they have to maybe prevent something, so like restraining orders, or different family things that they can get through the system. Same with, I know most universities they have the same thing. So I think trying to work on preventative to make stuff not happen would be better than what we have now, which is, like you said, I think where the frustration comes, because most of it is just reactive. Or like, oh, this happens, let's deal with it, let's try to fix it now. But that's most likely you have to use the victim to get anywhere in the criminal justice system, which is unfortunate, but
So what really bothers me is that university conduct codes, and I'm speaking about Canada now, I'm from Canada, so sexual assault is a federal crime offense, but universities fall under the provincial legislation. So every university in Canada follows or has different university conduct codes. Now, up until last year or the year before, all of the sexual assault charges, rules, etc., were laid under one university conduct code. It wasn't until last year that the university started creating their own sexual assault code, so that it's not considered part of just student misconduct. It's an issue that's huge and that needs the attention, but what bothers me is that because it's provincial, we can't, every university has a different code. And I don't think that's correct, and I don't think that's fair. If the act itself is a federal crime, then why are universities not treating it as serious? So in America, it's federal, but in Canada it's not. And so I wish that we can work on that on the systemic level.
There's a lot of mediums, and it was pretty broad in the description. So one of those that I always thought, because I can't speak as much on the justice system as, say, Anthony or Samantha could, but as far as the media goes, a thing I've always wondered is how much of high heels, makeup, short dresses, fake boobs are things that women would invent on their own if they never knew that they existed. If me and my girlfriend go out, she has to do the makeup and she has to dress nice, and she'll wear heels if we're going somewhere nice because she wants to look nice, but then an hour in she can barely walk and her feet hurt. And women like these things because they know them, but I wonder how much of that is in the way a woman's mind works, that they do like those things genuinely, or are they conditioned? Because I think that I question that. Part of me thinks maybe women just like feeling pretty, and that's why they like that, and then there's nothing you could do if you got rid of it. They would find another thing that would be like that, and that is something that is like a evolutionary psychology thing where women want to seem attractive to men. It's a competition thing, much like men alphaing each other. But part of it seems like it's a whole industry to make money, and I'm not sure that doesn't cause a lot of the problems with sexual assault, because women are seen as exuding sex rather than being seen as people to a lot of men. So the media aspect is one. I don't know the answer to it, but I wonder about it.
Some of my frustrations in regards to, say, the school system isn't particularly with the school system itself, but the lack of awareness, I guess, that students have. I can recall going through college and never once having any sort of knowledge about, if I were in some type of situation that involved sexual assault, what I could do. I think there's not enough awareness for students especially. We have laws, as you have mentioned here in the US, that entitle every student equal access to education without any barriers, and it is the responsibility of the schools, if they're federally funded, to provide that equal access. And if something has happened to a student, they shouldn't feel that they need to drop out of school because they don't want to endure that or go through it. It's the school's responsibility to make the accommodations for these students so that they can continue on with their education. It shouldn't be their fault, and they shouldn't feel punished to have to stop their education because they're not aware of it. So I think that there needs to be somehow more awareness on that aspect. And as far as the criminal justice system, my frustrations are the length of time I think that it takes for sexual assault victims to go through with things. So if their case were to even make it to trial, it's ridiculous how long it takes. I mean, at times it can take up to a year or two just to get to trial, and then some of the trials themselves can take 6 months, 12 months just to fully process. So not only is somebody reliving this trauma day after day and session after session throughout this trial, it's lengthy, so there's no time for healing. It shouldn't take as much time as it does. The only other factor, I think, well, probably not the only other, but one that I can think of, is my frustrations for how low conviction rates are. Out of maybe the 20% of cases of sexual assault that actually do get reported to the police, probably less than 10 of them actually go to trial. So the other 90% of that, only small portion, 20% of victims actually reporting, doesn't go to trial, and they don't receive any justice or have any knowledge. And those that do go through trial have to relive their own trauma, and they're usually not very informed throughout the process. They barely know what's going on. They don't even know if their attacker has been arrested until they're basically called into the DA's office and they tell them, hey, we're going to go to trial. And I think there's a lot of areas where things could be improved.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have like a ton of knowledge on the justice system, but from a personal perspective, I've had a few incidents. I don't know why, I answered the question the way that I did it earlier in terms of not feeling threatened ever, because as an adult, as like a 22-year-old, something happened with me where I was sexually assaulted, and there's like this, I feel like this immediate need to be like, well, the person tried to do it, like I could fight him off because I was like big and strong enough, but it's still like a scary thing. And I sought a lawyer when that happened. It actually happened when I was in treatment for something related to trauma that I had been through when I was younger. And so, when I talked to the lawyer, who's a very competent lawyer, and he described what I had to go through in order to fight this, in order to win something, in order to do anything with this, it was really difficult. I mean, it was difficult. Like my parents had this perspective of like, why do we pay this hospital like all this money, and like, and it was just a lot of pressure from all over the place. But I decided not to do anything with it, even though, I felt like I could. And, the guy was very confident that we'd win, but he just, but every time he'd say I'm confident that we'd win, he'd explain how long it was and how much would be involved in it. And it was really discouraging to know, that I was going to be up there, and that I was going to basically be called like a liar, and they were going to bring up my past and my other things that I'd been through in order to make it seem like I was kind of crazy already, and the person was in an authority position, so there's all sorts of scary stuff that happened with that. And yeah, looking back on it, I don't know if I made the right decision or not, but I'm happy with the decision we chose.
If you were in a position of power, what systemic changes would you implement?
It's a broad question because we went over. I don't know. So I hate to keep using like the criminal justice stuff. I guess I could use school stuff too. But like I said before, like preventative measures. Like she just talked about how when she went to school, like they didn't know. I think it's a little different now. I went to Westfield. Mine's more recent education, right? And so I think it's getting better, but changing. I think you got to change like all the preventative stuff. People need to know the options that they have. The criminal justice one, I think we all had the same general idea of like re-victimization through the criminal justice system once something's already in place, so like when you have to go to court and all that. I don't know how to change that because the whole Constitution confronting things and how the courts are run, it's very different. But I think there's definitely a way to change that, those concepts. But you can maybe change those concepts. Yeah, that's the one thing I'll work on is the length, which has always been an issue in criminal justice, and then, like I said, I've been to enough cases myself where not only are they super long and drawn out, but like Shane was talking about how everyone has the right to like a good defense, but they like treat these people like they're the criminal or it's pretty bad when the ones that I've gone to, and something has to change there because I don't know what the answer is either, but it was pretty horrific what those types of attorneys can do. But.
So almost the same thing. I volunteered with victim services for over 5 years, and so I met many sexual assault victims. It's just the process is too hard for the victim to go through. Like you said, can you bear the 2 years of going through this again, and then they make you look like the bad guy? Everything is against you. Why aren't you treated like you were the one who was hurt? Also, awareness in schools. Teach the boys and girls what yes means and what no means. Preventative, all of it is excellent. It's just, I feel that, and then student conduct codes. If I was a person in a position, I would definitely change the conduct codes and make it something that's very important and real and that needs to be worked on, and time shortening. Some kind of counseling has to be given right away, or therapy to the person who has been traumatized, and they need to be treated with all the care because they are the ones who went through this. So yeah, stop victimizing the victim.
If I was in a position of power, I think there's a lot of things you could do like preventatively, but I do think the justice system is slanted against the victims in a way that it's not in other cases. Like, for instance, if someone was to murder a family member of yours, no one would expect you to get up on the stand and defend that. You'd be called a liar and be told that that person deserved it and this and that. It would be handled completely differently. If someone killed your mom in front of you, you would not be expected to go on the stand and be like, I'm not lying, you know, like if you said, they might want you to, but if you said no, no one would think that you were a liar because of that. Well, with every rape case, it seems like that is something that they have to face. When Samantha's going through training for SANE, she's wasting a huge amount of time preparing for how they deal with being cross-examined by a defense attorney. Not how they deal with the sexual assault, and not how they collect evidence. The main, huge part of what she was focusing is on how meticulous everything needs to be because of defense attorneys. Now, and I just think that it's a corruption and it's a crazy thing that I think that there needs to be an adjustment for people pursuing that a conviction in sexual assault, where it's taken into account that they're directly traumatized by this person, and putting them in a position where they have to get up on a stand and go through that is not reasonable. That's why many of them are not going to trial. That's why people don't pursue it to the end, because they know what they have to go through to get there. Whilst if someone kills someone that you know, you don't imagine that. You kind of can just disconnect from the trial if you really want to and let it play out. And for the most part, it's probably going to go well. It's not 90% of murderers walk free. So I do think that attention needs to be brought to that. And if I was in a position of power, I would make changes to ensure that you're not dealing with that direct victim being, annihilated by defense attorneys and being fearful of that. I think there's barriers you could put in between them that would prevent that from happening.
If I were in a position of power, I'd like to say that I would make improvements for how the criminal justice system, as far as dealing with sexual assault victims and how their trials, if they make it to that point, are handled. But I don't know what those changes are. I think that there's a lot of other components to it, and I don't really know what the answer is, and I don't think it's an easy one. I think it's one that's probably going to take a lot of time and a lot of different cases to follow in suit, and just there's a lot to be changed about it, and I don't know exactly what I would change. I think that the justice system has, in a sense, moved towards some better components. Like now victims can have evidence collection of a sexual assault. It has to be within 5 days of the assault, but they actually hold on to these evidence kits for 15 years now, which they didn't used to do, and they don't have to report it. The victim can make their decision 10 years down the road if they want to report this, and that can be called into place to be investigated and handled at that point, which I think is a good progression for some people. Not everybody is okay to accept it and talk about it and move forward with things right away. So I think there's some pauses being met, but obviously there are changes, and I don't really know what changes it will take to make it better at this point. It's definitely has a lot that needs to be done.
If I was in a position of power, I definitely want to make sure that that any victim had access to comprehensive health care, health resources. Not only psychological, but physical as well. It's so stressful. I just don't know how to, what I could do to affect change that would be fair to both sides. It's really, really difficult. On the other side, again, from a personal perspective, I recently, I was just out, right around here, running with my girlfriend, and some guy, started catcalling and, coming toward her, and, I was way, way behind with, my dog, because my dog's old, and, there was this big ordeal that came out of it, and, I almost ended up, getting into a fight with him, but he ended up, getting arrested, and it was serious. They took it very seriously, and I was happy with the end result. Initially when he was arrested, a part of me was like, oh, I wish that I just beat this guy up, because that would have been so much better than anything else, because he's probably just going to walk away from it. But the way that the case resolved was that the judge contacted us both multiple times, and the judge asked us what we thought about it multiple times, and in the end he was this is what we're going to do. He's going to have to go through mandatory. They at first, when it first happened, the judge told us that he was going to be wearing an electronic bracelet, all sorts of stuff to reassure us, and then at the end the judge said that we could continue to press things, but that he thought that it would be best for this person to go through a pretty extensive therapy program, which I thought was a really good idea. So, that was something that I thought resolved well, to be honest.
If I was in a position of power to change something, I would change how we, as a society, the gender labels that we put on both sexes. I think we as a society often excuse inappropriate behavior as men will be men or boys will be boys, or it's something that's outside of the control of men, and I think that the bar is often very low for men. I also think that when men are the victims of sexual assault, as a society, we place labels on that are often inappropriate, And I think for women, or for girls, I mean, as a society, I feel like we generally objectify women and girls in a way that makes their consent seem less than. We also often take away the voice of women and girls, so it's teaching to be polite instead of assertive and things of that nature. So if I was in a position of power, I would balance out a lot of our assigned gender roles and what we place on both sexes. Being mindful of time, this will be our last question, and the question is, in one word or one sentence, how are you feeling?
Well.
More knowledgeable than aware.
Grateful for you guys coming and sharing. I'm really thankful for that.
Feeling thankful for the awareness.
A little anxious.
I would say grateful and rushed. All right, so that is a circle.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for coming
Yeah.
and participating in this circle. For me, it was an excellent experience.
No, I'm thankful too. We promised the security guard we would be out
did they
at
come check?
6. Yeah, she's been like back at the door, so I feel bad.
Can I kind of like not look at her, because I'm the one who said, she said, don't make it 6:01, and I said, promise. So I want to kind of run out of here.
So that's why it kind of came to a weird halt, and generally this, I don't know, the timing would have been a little bit different. But thank you so much for. What do you guys think about this as like a format for communication?
I don't like it, to be
No?
honest.
Okay.
I think that a conversation should be more open and not as well controlled with turns. I know we're on a strict time constraint, but not that I don't think we like disagree with anything.
Yeah.
But like there was a few answers that I wish